Hey, what's up, Liron here. I've got tons of brushes with me, and what I want to show you today is how I get used to using new brushes, how I get accustomed to them, test them out, see their range of widths and their water capacity and the various ways I can use them, okay? Whenever I get new brushes, that's how I approach it. Now, let me talk about these brushes. I was reached out to by Tracy Lebenzon, who makes these, okay? They're all made by him. They're amazing bamboo brushes, very unique, and he just sent me a bunch, so I'm really grateful if you're watching this. Thank you so much, Tracy. And if you're in the market for new brushes and you like this kind of bamboo style, be sure to check out the links below, and you get a coupon code, just Liron, you get 25% discount. So if you're in the market for new brushes, these are really nice, and he makes them himself, and he has a very interesting story for the brand itself. So what I'm gonna do in this video is choose just two and show you how I play around with them, and we will look at the rest in the future, okay? Gradually, I'll give them a try, because I'm trying to do this as naturally as I can and not just do a big, huge review video. The way I usually get started with new materials is just like that, okay? So let's take it to the table and get started. So let me show you how I do this. It's a fairly straightforward process. Now I, again, have two of the brushes. He sent me a bunch of them, and I just thought I'd try one that's a little thicker, one that's a little thinner. I actually have a bigger range there, but I chose these two, and the design is really, really beautiful. What I want to test out is several things. One of the most important things, and this will vary from brush to brush, is water capacity, how it handles when you apply pressure, how it behaves with the paint, how much paint you need to charge it with, and this really varies. For example, I have a Winsor Newton brush that you really have to dip a lot just to get it to be filled completely with paint. So these are the things you want to test out, and especially how it will react to pressure. So let me show you. And by the way, I will say a note about hair, because I heard a lot of people mention that that the hair, wow, this is really feels nice. A lot of people mention that the hair falls off the brush in the beginning. That's very common. It happens with the best brands as well. You just have to break through it, do a couple of fake paintings, and see how it improves with time. So here I don't see that it happened yet, and maybe it won't. Very interesting. So what I usually do is I do a bunch of exercises. So I'll go with lots of horizontal brush marks, and then I'll go with lots of vertical brush marks, just to practice and get a feel for what the brush is like. Now I will say this, the bristles, this is a synthetic one, not all are synthetic. The bristles are very soft, which I love. I love that kind of a thing. Now what's really interesting, I didn't know about this brush, I barely made my research, to be honest, is you get a very thick line that way, but you get a very thin line this way. Even if you press harder, it's still thinner, you see? So it's very interesting. It has this flat feeling to it, meaning the brush is flat on one side. So these are the things you want to, obviously you want to purchase your brushes knowing their functionality, but especially with these more unique brushes, it is very beneficial to study them well. This is really good for me. I do need more brushes that can produce a larger range, from really thin, like you see here, all the way to the thicker lines. One more thing I wanted to try out is twisting, because when you have one thicker side and then the other thinner, you go, and by the way, I love this sticker just because I don't want to be confused with the models. I want you to be able to know which one is which in the future. But in case you see the twisting action, it gets you a lot of different widths, and that's really important. Now one more thing you want to get a feel for is the capacity, the paint's capacity. Let's get a bit of red here. How much paint it can store when you're painting, and this feels good. This feels like it has a really nice capacity. You see, after a couple of brush marks, it starts to go a little dry, which is good. That's the effect I want when I get the dry brush effect going. Now let's actually try a bit of that dry brush effect. This is really nice. You know, the bristles being soft allows you to sometimes get these broken lines really nicely. And this is just me, again, playing around with these brushes. It's not really a review, it's just me learning them. And I do hope to show more of them in the future. Tracy is really nice, and the company's story is interesting as well. I do recommend you read it if you visit the website. It's really interesting, and I don't know, it's just a very interesting brush, and I always enjoy using new materials that are strange and interesting, and you know, look at this design, it's really pretty crazy. So I finished with a lot of horizontal marks. Now let's get to some more vertical marks just to test it out and see. The water capacity isn't, if you compare it, for example, to the thicker Escodas, it's not the same, and I was told that you really need to dip it in a lot of water and let it really soak all the way to the base. However, it's better than I expected. It's really good. I can get quite a lot of lines in before I need to recharge. So this is really nice. I think these would work really nicely for the finer details. Wires, riggings on boats, things like that. That could be really nice. Okay, so now I feel like I made the most out of this piece of paper. I'm going to switch it up and then move on to the second brush. And by the way, just to let you know, this is the Wangi Brown Synthetic brush. Sorry that the price is still here, but I just didn't want to be confused. The next one is the small, soft, white synthetic, okay? So let me clean it up and come back and test this one out. So next up is this one, as I mentioned, small, soft, white synthetic. And let's get to it. This one has much longer bristles. One more thing I do want to test out that I will show you after I'm done with testing this one out is blending. How these are good for blending different colors together. We'll look at that in a moment. By the way, that's the last time this is going to be a white bristle brush. And this is really nice. It's a teeny tiny line. I love sword brushes because they have, it's not really, I would say, officially a sword brush. It's just a rigger, probably very thin. But the good thing is, it does, they do tend to have a bit of a better capacity when it's not just a very thin brush, but there is some, you see how it gets a little thicker near the base. That's good. So here we go, a bunch of lines. The water capacity on this one isn't as good, and I find that to be the case with a lot of the white brushes. If you compare it to the Escoda Perla line, that's a very common phenomenon. They're not really meant to have a really huge capacity. They're meant for smaller details that you can get with, by the way, which I love, with a free hand, with a very free hand. Like I love to hold the brush from the edge very often. My vertical lines are terrible with these brushes. That's something I have to practice on. But if you do hold it closer to the tip, then obviously you will get a bit of control in that way, but you will give up maybe some of the spontaneity and fun and looseness. By the way, look at this. This is really nice. I love how it's uneven. That's like a big design plus for me. It's just very interesting, and they do feel really nice in your hand. I will say one more thing. This is really just kind of a first impressions video. I will do a longer, proper review if you'd want me to, so let me know in a comment down below. One more thing, they're very light. If I compare them to, for example, we have the Escoda Plein Air set, it's much heavier, which makes sense because it's metal, so I don't know how it will compare maybe to a wooden. Even if I compare it to this Leonard brush, it's a little heavier, granted, but even if I compare these two, this is a little heavier. So probably because of the bamboo. This is made from bamboo. So I don't know, it's interesting. It really will depend on what you prefer. If you like the feeling of a very light brush in your hand, this is really perfect for that. If you prefer more of the heavy brushes, maybe you want to stick to something a little heavier. And you can test these things out in the store, which is good news. So here we go, just a bunch of lines going in all directions. One thing I do want to incorporate more in my watercolor practice is circles, because I've been doing a lot of anatomy work and drawing work. I do want to do more of these more challenging shapes that most people don't necessarily think of in the watercolor sphere. When you do calligraphy, obviously, and by the way, these brushes are marketed also for calligraphy. When you do calligraphy, obviously you do need to think about these curved shapes, these circles and all sorts of things. This is really nice. The brush really reacts to, you see the movement I take? This is really interesting. Let me try it out with the thicker one, because I haven't. The more calligraphy style. I don't know, it really moves with you. Now I'm curious. Let's try out, I'm going to do a comparison with my Escodas. If I do the same thing with the Escoda brush, Yeah, there is some of that. It's interesting. I don't know, it's probably thanks to the soft bristles, but these thin ones are really good for that, so we'll see. Here we go. Really, really nice. So let's try blending edges, because that's something that can be difficult depending on what brush you use, what type you use. So I'm going to just put this bit of paint here. And now I'm going to come back with a clean brush. I'm going to wipe some of it on my tissue here and just try and see how well it blends. So, pretty standard in a good way. So I didn't know what to expect, but I guess it works. It works well. Let's try out another one, going from one color to another color next to it. Bit of blue. And so these are nice. Sometimes the way the brush applies the paint to paper can have an effect on how the blending works, but for these it seems to work just normally, so that's good news. One thing that I don't know if that'll bug you or not, for me it doesn't really matter, it's a non-issue, but you see how close it is to the edge here is thick. It's gonna get wet when you dip it in water. So if you're not, I don't care about that really, but if you want the feeling that, you know, don't get the water all the way past the bristles, maybe you want to go with a longer one, or, you know, stick to something with a thinner head, but I don't think it matters really. I will have to test out the bamboo handle parts for a while and see. I think it's dried. I don't think anything will happen to it when it touches water. But just another thing to consider when you're trying these out. I actually really like these. They have good capacity, more than I expected. So what I'm gonna do is probably make a proper longer review, maybe just even showing all of them. That could be nice. Let me know if that's something you're interested in. Let's try I'm gonna soak it all the way to the edge. Tracy did tell me you have to really make sure they're well soaked because of the softness of the bristles. You want to get any air bubbles out. So let me try it out just to make sure I'm properly soaking it. So let's try it out like that. Yeah, so the water capacity is medium, I would say. It's not really meant, these particular ones aren't necessarily meant for huge washes. I do have a couple of others that may be more suitable for that. Let me know if you want to see more of this, and definitely if you're into the small details, these are really nice, and I love the design. I mean, look at these. Very unique. I like the idea of how every brush is going to be a little different, and the way it's carved, it's not going to be the same. So if that's something you're interested in, you want to check it out, I'll leave links to everything in the description box. Now let's wrap it up face to face. So thank you so much for watching once again. I hope you enjoyed seeing me work through these. Very interesting, especially I think the weight is really nice. If you like the lightweight brushes a little more, which I can understand why some people prefer that, you definitely want to check these out. Water capacity is medium, on some of these probably low, but they feel really nice, and the sables are very soft, the hairs are very soft. So be sure to check that out, links below, coupon code Liron. I want to thank you so much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate if you drop a like and maybe a comment, maybe share it with someone you know will find it interesting. That really helps me reach more people. Thank you so much, and I will see you again in the next video real soon.